So what we're going to do is begin the story. Our subject is the hostile brother. Is this a hostile brother inside or outside? If it's inside, how did the brother get so hostile? So, you ready? So we're leaving our time now. We're leaving our time now. There are 4 directions: east, west, north, and south. We honor all 4 directions, but we also honor the 5th direction, the vertical one, which is in us here this morning. Well, you must know that once upon a time there was a queen and a king. And the queen wanted a daughter. Tried and couldn't have a daughter. Wanted a son. Tried and tried, couldn't have a son. Eventually she met an old woman in the woods. The woman said to her, "Go home, take a bath, sleep outdoors, throw the water from your bath under your bed. In the morning, you'll see 2 blossoms, one red and one white. Pick the white one. Don't pick the red one. Got that?" "Oh, yeah, I hear that one." So she went home and she took a bath and she threw the water under the bed and she slept restlessly all night. In the morning, she looked under the bed. There was one red and one white flower, and she reached for the white flower and she ate that. Is that right? And then the other hand just reached for the red one. She ate that too. You would have done the same. So after 9 months, there was a big scene. The father wasn't there, but the queen was there in the birthing room, and there was a midwife there. So everything was prepared, the birth was ready. I must tell you, the first thing that came out was a little snake about that long. Midwife didn't know what to do. I mean, it is upsetting to say to the mother, "By the way, your child is a snake." So the midwife thought about it and thought probably wasn't worth mentioning. Probably was not worth mentioning. So she took the snake and just threw it out the window. She just threw the snake out the window. And then the second child was born, a young, beautiful, 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 blonde boy. Just the kind you want for a little king type. I think I'll go a tiny bit farther.
Yeah, I think you should.
So that's the way that was. The king and the queen were both happy about their boy. 1 year went on, 2 years went on, 3 years went on. Midwife retired and went back to her hut in the woods. You think everything's okay? It's a little problem somewhere. Do you feel it? What happened was the boy got to be 15, 16 years old, and the father said, "It's time for you to marry. And I have made an arrangement with this woman in the neighboring kingdom, and you're going to have her daughter, and she's terrific. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, get your horses and your carriage and start out to meet them." So the boy did. He went down the road about 5 miles, came to a crossroads, suddenly, in the middle of the crossroads, is this enormous snake. Ah! 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 Horses get a little freaked out, and they stop. Just a little. They go, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to be married." "I'm the elder son. Elder son gets married first. Elder son gets married first. Find a bride for me before you have a bride." What the hell would you do? So he turned his horses around and went back to the castle and said to his father, "We have to talk." So he said to the father, "Do I have an elder brother?" "No, you do not. You're the elder brother. The only... This would happen. I met this dragon and he said this and this and this. We'll ask your mother." So they went to the mother and they said, "He says, there's a big snake out there that says he's the elder brother. Did you have a child before me?" Mother says she doesn't know anything about it. That's all you know, that if you ask your mother, she'll tell you, "I don't know anything about it." Whether she's telling the truth or not, we'll never know. So they knew where the midwife was. They went to the midwife and they said to the midwife, "Found her out in the woods." "Did this happen?" "Oh, yes, it did. I didn't think it was worth mentioning. I threw the snake out the window." Well, they were in it then, it was true. So what would you do if you were the father? What they did was, they took an ad in the Village Voice. It said, "King's son needs bride. Be prepared to be a hostess. You need to know good dress and many things." Naturally, a bride came. They got ready. They brought the big worm inside the castle. That's an incredible thing. Did you hear that? Wow. They brought the big worm inside the castle. And then, when everything was ready, they said to the bride, "You know, in this culture, we don't introduce you to the groom until the wedding day. So we'll just get you fitted up and everything like that." So they did all that and got all her advice. She was standing there at the altar, ready for it with her white dress on, and then out of the room came the great worm. And he stood next to her, and he wound his tail around her legs like that. And they were married. And then they went into the room where the snake had been living, and everyone said goodbye, and everyone gave them toast, as you do with a married couple, newly married couple. They had the room all prepared with rosemary, and all the sheets were all scented, and they did all the beautiful things that they used to do in the old times when a man and a woman were married. But when they came back in the morning and opened the door to welcome them for breakfast, there was only one person in the room. The snake was there alone. So, they showed him where the door was, and he went back to the woods. So, a week later, the boy got in his carriage again, and he went out to the crossroads, and the snake was there. And what did the snake say? Tell me. Ah! A bride for me before a bride for you. You cannot be married until I am married. So, didn't they take another ad? That's what they did. They took ads in newspapers farther and farther away. Or in terms of the story, they send messages to kingdoms farther and farther away. And once more, there was the wedding, is that right? Once more they got there at the altar. Once more the bride stood there. Once more his tail curled around the bride like this. And then they were married. And you must know that in this culture, they aren't considered married until the next morning when the priest comes in for a separate ceremony. So from that point of view, the snake is right when he says the marriage has not been completely done. Now I want you to know that 12 women were eaten in this way. So you must know that after a pause, when no women would come anymore, there was a woman, a young woman living out in the woods with her father, who was a woodcutter. He had known the castle for a long time. And she said one morning at breakfast, "I'm going to do this." And he said, "Are you insane? Are you crazy? We know what that castle is like." She said, "Well, I'm going to do this." She went out in the woods and she found an old woman living in a hut. And she said to this woman, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the castle and be the next woman." The old lady said to her, "I want you to tell them that the wedding will not take place for 6 months. And during that 6 months, I want you to make 7 wedding shirts." Now you're looking at the kind that they make in Russia and Poland. They're white with tremendous amount of embroidery on them. It takes a woman a month just to make one of them. I want you to make 7 of those. Then, when you get to the castle, I want you to ask for 2 buckets of lye, 2 brushes that are made of harshest bristles that can be found, and a bucket of warm milk. And I'll tell you what to do with those. So that's the way that went. She went to the castle. She arrived. She said, "I am here." By this time, the king and the queen are not so excited anymore when one of these women appear. And they tend just to, they made a lot of wedding cakes and they just keep them in the refrigerator and just kind of bring them out. Because there never is a wedding breakfast. And the priest is really getting tired of this ceremony. Nevertheless, when she comes, she says, "I want 2 buckets of lye. I want 2 of these brushes with the really hard bristles and the bucket of warm milk when I ask for it." They agree to that. So, they're ready at the altar, are they? She comes up in her white dress, and the snake comes out, and he stands beside her, and he winds his tail around her legs. And then the first words are spoken. And they go into the room. And everyone crosses themselves and closes the door. And when they get in the room, he says, "Come over here, baby. Take off your clothes." I have put on all 7 shirts. I say to him, "I will take off one of my blouses if you take off one of your skin."
Nobody ever said that to me before.
I'm saying it to you now. So I'll take this off if you take off one of yours. I will take off another of my wedding shirts if you take off another of your skin. Another skin. I have 2 wedding shirts left on. And I will take off this wedding shirt, this, my 6th wedding shirt, if you will take off one more of your skin. Is it real?
Ain't no more skin there. No one's ever asked. No. Nobody ever in my life. Never.
I'm asking it of you. When he had taken off his last skin, he was lying on the floor as a white, shapeless mass. He no longer looked like a snake or like a human being. He was a white, helpless, vulnerable mass. And then she took one of those brushes and she dipped it in lye. And she began to work on him. And she worked on him for an hour and a half until all the lye was, all the brush was used up, and occasionally he screamed. Is that right? What did you say? And then she took another of those brushes and she dipped it in the second bucket of lye and she started to work over his and she rubbed his head and his face and all of that. Then it went on until 3 o'clock in the morning. And she was a strong woman or she could not have done that. And when that was done, she asked for the bucket of warm milk. She asked for the bucket of warm milk. She asked for the bucket of warm milk. And with tremendous tenderness, she washed him in the warm milk. As his mother, sometimes, when he was near the breast, was sprayed with that milk. And she washed him all over. And he turned into a beautiful man with long arms and long, beautiful legs. He turned into a beautiful, magnificent prince with an orange shirt on.
Yeah. I know some of these guys.
You know some of these guys. And that's the way that went. And then, about 5 or 6 in the morning, he finally did get in bed. But there was so much joy in the 2 of them, they couldn't tell when they were talking and when they were making love. And at 8:30 in the morning, when they knocked with the cappuccino, they were astounded to find 2 people in the room, both of them dancing. Is that right?
Aye.
Both of them dancing. They had 2 people there who were dancing. Hey, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. What's that? Whoa, whoa, whoa. We're going to do a discussion of the story now, and I just mentioned that there's an old tradition that when you were born, there was a twin born with you, a spiritual twin, who knew all of your origins in the other world, and knows also why you came to this world, and what your task is. In what sense you are a royal son. Then before you're born, all of that memory is removed so that you can face life like the rest of us, just muddling along. And that is why the initiation is called remembering. Because in one sense, the purpose of the initiation is to put you back in touch with that one who was born with you at birth and then disappeared. Sometimes the people we fall in love with because they resemble that twin who disappeared. And we feel the divine when we're with that person because we know that somewhere this twin is carrying knowledge for us. And the question is, how old do we have to get before we meet this spiritual twin once more? And what is necessary for us to do? What kind of listening do we have to do? So we've been dealing with the I, so to speak. Remember the prince? He's like the ego or the I. And then there's the hostile brother, the one out the window. And then we mustn't forget the third. the spiritual twin. Because how could the conflict between those two be solved alone? So this is a poem by Juan Ramón Jiménez. Yo no soy yo. I am not I. I am not I. I am this one walking beside me, whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and at other times I forget. As the Buddhists would say, no blame. No blame in the forgetting. I am not I. I am this one walking beside me, whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and at other times I forget. The one who forgives sweet when I hate. The one who remains silent when I talk. The one who takes a walk when I am indoors. The one who will remain standing when I die. It's a wonderful poem, isn't it? And you can feel that one, that beautiful line, El que perdone dulce cuando odio, the one who forgives sweet when I hate. And you're arguing with someone, arguing with your wife or something, and another voice says, you know, this whole thing's ridiculous. But I have to continue. The one who forgives sweet when I hate. And the one who remains silent when I talk. It's a hard line for everyone who writes poetry, because they know that the one who's giving the poetry reading is not the same one who wrote the poem. The one who wrote the poem says, I'll just stay home, if you don't mind. You go ahead and do it. Make an ass of yourself. The one who takes a walk when I'm indoors, because this spiritual twin is older than us. It's been born many, many, many times. It has its place in nature. It knows all of that. It knows the trees, our ancestors, etc. And so if we stay too long in a room with plastic chairs, it'll also say, I think I'll go now. You do it best you can in the discussion. I'm going to go. And the next line is this, the one who will remain standing when I die. And it's amazing that Juan Ramón describes all of these things and doesn't even mention the body or the soul. Does it without any language, without any of that. So, that's a holy poem to me. What we're going to do now is all of us here are just going to plunge into a discussion of the story, whatever qualities in it you want to go into. And one way to understand stories that are complicated in this way is to say, you know, what 3 or 4 points of advice does a story have? Some men said that the only thing they'd been able to do was to go into celibacy. And I was very touched by that. It shows how powerful the hostile brother is. Now, what advice does this story have? To put yourself in the position of the girl who's going to come, the 13th one. What?
You got to find a woman in the woods.
Yeah, you got to find a woman in the woods. An old woman in the woods, not just a young woman in the woods isn't going to help. And there's that whole tradition, Marion Woodman and others are talking about, that the thing that's missing in our culture for the women is the adoration and knowledge of the crone. We got the virgin, we got the mother, and we have the dead. Is that it? For a lot of the women in ancient times, they adored that time in which their menstrual blood stopped. And they feel that it's going back into the body now as a form of wisdom. And it was the old women who carried the wisdom of the whole tribe. And so the older women in our culture are devastated because the young women even don't know what they can hold and are holding. And in this story, you see, one of the things that you can say is that this is not a woman. Everyone in the story is you. So, since it's been known for centuries that the soul of a man is female, therefore, this is also your soul here. And that soul can receive material from the crone directly, just as you can as a man. You can go and your soul will hear it, what she has to say. So I think one of the greatest things that women are trying to do now is to resurrect, and just like we are trying to resurrect the elders, they're trying to resurrect the crone. All right, so you go to the woods, and you meet an old woman, right? What else? What's the second piece? In the fairy tale, shirt is a code word used for heart. So when you're making wedding shirts, you're making something over the heart. And so the heart needs to be educated, cultivated. Got to sow flowers on your own heart. So boy, that's what 6 months work on your own heart. My wife, and I have a friend, Kathleen Westcott from this area, who's a Ojibwe. And my wife said the other day, I'm stunned. Because when Kathleen comes and she's working on some problem that she has that's psychic, she begins to sew. And I asked her about that, and she said, every time you take a needle and pass it through a hole, you're going into the other world and back, and into the other world and back, and into the other world and back. That's why it's a holy act for women to do that. You know, Blake said, somebody mentioned it here, that you cannot expect to get through a relationship unless both of you are creative. And the women that come up to me and they complain, said, I was with this guy for 6 years, I can't believe it. You know, he said he was good, and then he betrayed me and he left, and so on and so on. And I used to be sympathetic and say, gee, the men are really terrible, you're right. And then you get points for that. But now I just say, were you creating any art during that time? She looks confused and says, no. And I said, well, you got no right to expect the relationship to continue then. So that's that thing. When you create art, you're in touch with your depth, as also with the other world. So that's a form of sewing, and the connection is beauty.
I was just thinking about, this may be jumping too far ahead, but the peeling away of the skins, that one of the wisdoms of the crone is deceiving Eve, all those layers that we have.
See, he's got that somehow, somehow someone has to tell you that underneath that, there's a core, underneath all those layers. How many men here with that hostile brother know that? That would be a traditional knowledge.
It's also like a voice that counteracts the hostile brother's voice. I have what I call a critical voice in my head, you know, and I have a friend who, when I got involved in all this stuff, I said, I don't know what the hell I'm doing with blind these guys, and there's this voice saying, it's called the imposter syndrome. You don't belong there, sooner or later they'll find out. She said, these are your peers. And it's so hard to hear that, and it has to come, many times come from outside.
That's lovely. See, he feels awkward, and he has to know that underneath his awkwardness, there's a clean elegance, just like that.
Right. A question that I have is, why did the snake feel the need to eat the women?
As you said before, all the different characters are all the same person. So I don't look at it as a literal sense, I think it's another place, but in the mythological sense, it's us destroying that reflection of our femininity.
Yep.
So it's not really the death of a woman I see as much as the death that we're still stifling that aspect, that other part of ourselves that needs to come out.
Nature is feminine. If that's so, I mean, the killing of the Amazon is exactly the same snake.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
All right.
Isn't there also a certain passivity in the female where one woman right after the other goes to the snake?
Well, you got to ask yourself, what is it do I have the savvy feminine in me, or do I have the helpless little Miss America feminine in me? And the tradition always is that your masculine is older than your feminine. You could be 35 years old and you could have a 16-year-old feminine in you, because most of the experiences are registered in your masculine parts, and very few have registered in your feminine. So your feminine is very young. And just like with a woman, she can be 35 years old in her feminine, and then her masculine can be a 16-year-old biker who's really fucking dangerous. You get an argument where the biker comes towards you.
That's my problem.
You know, with his leather whips. But you're looking at a soul a psyche being destroyed here, isn't that right? In which your own feminine is so young and so unable to think strategically. You know, Michael always says, what's the essence of the warrior? He's a little different than Robert Moore on this. Michael says the essence of the warrior is strategy. Figuring out ahead of time what to do. Yeah.
I was struck by that mirroring process, taking off the shirts versus taking off the skirts. Almost one leading the other in some kind of
Well, why is it? Because you're regarding the other one as your equal.
Yeah, right.
Is that right?
It's the feminine, I guess, in us that leads in that sense.
No, it's also, for me, it stood out as having enough patience to go through the process. I mean, you have this plan, and you don't jump. I mean, as the first skin goes off, the feminine didn't say, okay, now we can go. And I mean, and there was some improvement in the snake. It's like really continuing to hang in there as these different skins are peeled off until you get to the core.
Yeah.
And that's important. Have that patience then as you work the plan.
I once told it with Connie Martin, who's a good storyteller from out west, and she said to me, she was able mythologically to follow the whole thing. And she said, but I want to tell you, Robert, that in the 60s, we women did a lot of the scrubbing with wire brushes, but we did not do the washing with the warm milk.
I want to say something about that. That image of stripping down of both of them. It suggests to me that there's something in that also about the protection of the soul, of the feminine soul within us. Because what the story is saying is the more of that snaky, scaly armor the masculine in us has on, the more the feminine needs to keep the heart protected and covered. So as we strip that snake stuff down, then the feminine takes off the shirts and we get down to the heart. So that feminine soul and that beautiful, elegant masculine core, they're the ones that are to be married in the end.
Oh, it's lovely, it's lovely, it's lovely. And a lot of the lack of intimacy between men and women now must be because the women, number one, don't have enough feminine curtains on them, because everyone said you should become a man and go out in the world. They don't have enough feminine heart shirts on, and so the man is scaly, and then the savvy feminine has to know it's going to be painful on the male side, and if that's inside of you, you got to be willing to give yourself pain. One of the things it said is when you're born, you come down through the various stars, and you come down through the various planets, and at every birth, each planet gives you something. And the Venus gives you that, and the other one gives you this, and then you come down here, and then in birth it's all flattened out and you come out, but you don't remember what you got from the various planets.
Your guardian angel is, you have a dialogue with your guardian angel up there, and there's a dialogue going on in which you're being instructed as to what you're going to get when you come.
And the guardian angel in that sense is giving you back what happened to you when you came down. All of the powers that you lost at birth are being given to you because you're in the savvy place now, you've asked for it, or you need it, or
Piece about the male desire, the lust, the intensity is the engine that drives that.
That's right.
transformation. And
there's no apology for that.
Yeah, there's a dance, and he wants this, and he's willing to go through this pain over and over. In the end, he gets a complete transformation. He gets what he wants, but a whole lot more. But it's that, Warren said the desire is holy. Boy.
Yeah. There's an Indian poem in which he says the difference between the girl and the woman, and the girl puts her hair on top of her head, and the adult woman lets it fall over her breast to hide that. And the girl stretches out her long legs, and the woman carefully folds a sari over both. But it says with the woman, all is not quiet inside. Something is going on there. There's a faint reddening of her breasts. There's a flushing of the cheeks. And it says, then in the bodiless world, the God is with her and begins to fly all around. And then the poem says, listen, soon, he turns to the God and says, listen, soon this woman will come to you. So the more sexual energy the woman has in the Indian tradition, in India, the closer she is to the divine. And that's what happened here too. The sexual energy of this man is what drove it on. That's a wonderful point. Yeah, thank you.
My take on the snake skins is, when it's finally been a perpetrator more than a victim, is that the snake as survival mode every time I move from survival mode, I destroy a relationship. So I have to take off those layers in myself.
Yeah. And the poem, the story absolutely says that the destruction is going on with your own souls. You destroy 12 of your souls in a row.
Yeah, the part of the story that speaks to me very powerful is when he comes out of hiding and declares himself, and stops the carriage, and that speaks very powerful to me that it's not until he comes and says what he wants, and comes out of hiding. But he's up to that point, he's sneaking around and hiding, and he comes out and says, this shit's gonna stop until I get what I want.
Yeah.
That's the anger. For me, that's the anger.
This man over here said something about he looked at the 6 shirts and figured that this was being dishonest because there's a lot of mistrust of cunning and mistaking being cunning for being dishonest.
Right.
And I think this is what you were just saying now, just a second ago. That there's a certain mystery that is very tempting not to trust it and to look at it as just subterfuge and putting something over on you. And of course, we look at women a lot in that direction, I think. There's a lot of mistaking women's cunning for being dishonest. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't say those kind of things out loud, then we assume that, wow, basically we trust women. Basically, I doubt it.
What struck me is that when the snake shows up on the road, that seems to be an inkling of coming to consciousness, as the rest of the story indicates, if it's going to get to the end where that good part is finally ready to know.
It's like
that whole progression is hard work.
Yeah.
And it takes dedication and commitment. And it's not for free.
It's like the moment in Iron John when the dog is pulled out. And people say, well, what is that? Well, that's the time I lost my job. And that could also be the guy turning up in the road. I'm sick of this job. A job for me before a job for you. Yeah. Right?
There was a woman about the midwife that I found and she's the one that made the decision to throw the snake up. This wasn't, a sin of the family. This was an arbitrary outsider, very small character, okay, and then made the decision that created all the tension from which the story rose. Okay, and then
if we take it back further, it's when the mother decided to eat both of those flowers.
But then that would be fair that she be held responsible for her acts. Okay, but you have this little character just kind of, okay, hi, I'm going to fuck everybody up. See you later.
That's right. It's probably God you were looking at right there. Right? I'll see you later. That's his job. See if you can find me in the woods, Lovely. From one point of view, what you just saw there was the spiritual twin up above us. And without contact with that spiritual twin, you can't tell the timing. You'll open the door too early. Is that clear what I'm saying? And so it's possible that this woman is the spiritual twin here. Right? That's why she knew what to do.
This is like a creation story. We have another Adam and Eve. And instead of going from Adam and Eve, though, you seem to have a nicer model. You go from Adam and Eve to Cain and Abel, where there's just murder. And in this story, we have the same thrown-out brother, but we have a little bit more story to it to have a solution to the murderous thing between Cain and Abel.
Beautiful.